You heard it during the Rams broadcast. The Rams have changed their blocking scheme. But because it's a broadcast, they have to talk about other things, so they never got a chance to explain it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the talent that the Rams have in their backfield, how they changed their blocking scheme, who they stole that from, and what this means for your fantasy football team going forward. In 2018, the Rams drafted Daryl Henderson out of Memphis, and I was never a fan. When you look at the Memphis offense, they do a very good job with their zone flanking blocking scheme. They get a hat on a hat. They open huge gaps that allowed him to use his speed and take it to the house. It was very simple for him. They didn't ask a lot out of him, and I didn't expect this to translate to the NFL level. I didn't have him as a day 2 pick, and the fantasy football community reacted as you usually figure. Now, when I evaluate players for fantasy football, I look at the scheme output potential, I look at the talent of the player, and I look at the opportunity that he has. Daryl Henderson was very strong on opportunity because Gurley was old and people thought maybe he'll take over. But when it came to talent and when it came to the scheme output, it wasn't as warm and fuzzy as everybody made it out to be, and I had claimed he was an overrated talent. To this point, he has done nothing. And from what I'm seeing, you should expect that to continue. Now, the next year, they take Cam Akers. Another reason to be very excited about the running back. But when I was scouting Cam Akers, I had an uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. You can see on my draft board, I had him as the 5th rated running back, and I had a note saying that I cannot figure this guy out. And it took me quite a while. There are positives with him, with his speed, with his agility, as so it looks. And with his toughness, he's solid in the passing game. He's solid in the pass blocking game. Scrappy, hungry, talented running back. But there was something in the pit of my stomach that said, don't believe in this player. And it took me until June to see what that was. I kept watching his film after the draft, especially when the Rams, who typically take very bad running backs, took him. I was adamant that I had to figure out the reason for this uneasy feeling. And it took until I finally saw an all-22 film. On the all-22, they showed the wide and they showed the tight. The tight is the view that happens right behind the offensive line. So you can see the holes, you can see how the running back is moving. And what I saw on that film very quickly was that Cam Akers is linear. He is a splay-footed, linear running back. Now, what this means is imagine you're playing basketball and you're doing a crossover dribble. Do you just do it with your arms or do you embellish it with your whole body? With Cam Akers, his cuts don't involve his hips. They are just his feet. So his feet get wide, and that's what he uses to change angles. Now, because there's less lateral movement in that, there's less deception. So you're going to see a running back who's running into contact constantly. Now, with his speed, yes, he can catch an angle and he can catch a gap and he can make good with that. And you saw that all the time on his college film. All of his yards were piled up from him having a defender take the wrong angle or him hitting a gap in the blocking scheme and being able to make good on that. But he simply isn't dynamic. Play in and play out, you're going to see him play the game like a 230-pound thumper. He's not going to create for himself. He's simply going to power ahead and take the yards that are given by the defense. And at this point in time, I pumped the brakes on Cam Akers pretty hard. I said, again, we are looking at a Rams back who is an opportunity fantasy play. This is not a running back that you want to spend a high round pick on because the chance of him staying with the role isn't all that high. And I also said, and I got up on my soapbox with this one, and I said, Malcolm Brown will be the highest scoring running back in the Rams system in 2020. And that was right. But it was also wrong because I had no idea how right that take was going to be. The system output for this backfield is 25 points PPR format. That's what you can expect from this backfield typically. And Gurley scored a ton of points because he was the only one touching the ball. With Malcolm Brown, I expected it to be a true committee. I expected 12, 9, and 4. basic breakdown of what you would see. Malcolm Brown 12, Cam Akers 9, Daryl Henderson 4. But then the Rams changed their blocking scheme. Prior to this season, you saw the Rams in a student body left, student body right blocking scheme, where the offensive line leaves the line of scrimmage at a 0 to 15 degree angle. It's used to stretch the defense wide and create gaps where they aren't able to pursue and hold their integrity. Now, this is good for a speed back. This is good for a back who can see a gap and hit that gap at full throttle. And that played into the hands of Daryl Henderson and Cam Akers to a degree. Doesn't make them good, but it is what they want to see on the field. But that's not what they do anymore, and there's a reason for that. In the student body left, student body right, 45 degree angles, which is their other go-to, there was a problem. Because in the fascinating game of spy versus spy, teams in the NFL started to figure out what to do against this. Now, there were two different models that were going on at the same time. There was a Kansas City model and a New England model. In New England, they would bring up Van Noy or an outside linebacker up near the shoulder of the tackle on both sides. And they would blow up that tackle to make sure that the whole line couldn't flow laterally. If you cut off the head, the snake's body just billows up on the back side of it and you can't do anything about it. So Van Noy would either blow up the outside shoulder and freeze all the movement that was going laterally, or he would jump the inside shoulder and penetrate straight into the backfield. The defensive line on the inside of that would compress and attack. And this is a big problem for the Rams scheme, and I did not expect McVay to have an answer to this. And the reason this is a big problem is because I defend the run and the pass the same exact way, which gives my defensive line a head start. I'm not reading run or reading pass and then making a pass rush move. I'm blowing up the play and getting into the backfield every single play. You cannot give that advantage to the defense. The other way that it was done is by a hijacker, which Kansas City used Ragland to do. They would put a linebacker right over the nose of the center, and as soon as the ball was snapped, they would just truck him. They would tea kettle the center, and that broke the ranks of the zone flowing left and flowing right. This created a gap in the middle of the offense. It prevented teams from being able to outflank you with numbers, and it put a natural gap in the middle of the field for your weak side linebacker to have a downhill pursuit angle to make sure that that cutback wasn't there. So with that in mind, all your pursuit could go to the front side of the play, because with that gap being closed on the backside angle, there was no place for the running back to go. So this hurt the Rams a great deal. This is a big reason why the Rams went from killing everybody in 2019 or 2018 and going to the Super Bowl and then struggling mightily last year. They said that the offensive line got weaker, and it did, but people understanding how to scheme against them put them in position to fail a lot. It hurt their pass block game because teams were more aggressive towards it. And truly, I did not believe McVay could find an answer to this. But McVay is a phenomenal coach and a master level thief. Now, last year we saw something quite different. A team had gone into the offseason, put on their thinking cap, and stole a ton of concepts from the college game. That team was the Baltimore Ravens. And what they put together worked quite effectively. It worked so effectively that McVay copied them. What you saw with the Baltimore Ravens last year is when they would run a zone concept, it was at a 75 to 90 degree angle. It was straight downhill. They came right down the chute. And this McVay saw as an opportunity to balance the scales again. By putting the offensive line on a very vertical zone blocking scheme, it created a lot of problems for a defense. Now, instead of just being able to attack, you didn't know if the offensive line was going to go into a pass set or if they were just going to come right at you. So you have now the choice of, am I attacking or am I anchoring? And that puts them back in a bad situation. The surprising thing about this is that despite it being very compressed and very vertical, this still allowed teams to get outside because it changed the angles for the defense. When you fire downhill, what you saw with Baltimore is when they fired downhill, they would get a good push on certain players. And that would muck up the angles and put a ton of traffic in the face of the weak side and the middle linebacker. So they couldn't pursue to the outside. And you were still getting the push on the right side, or if you were going right, to get that angle so that you could get to the outside. There's only one team that has a clue of how to deal with this, and it's a very subtle twist, and we'll talk about that later. But I don't expect this to be something that the NFL finds an answer for very quickly, because only one team seems to have that answer. To bring this all home, why is this so important to the Rams' backfield? Because it changes the demand on the running back. If you're doing student body left, student body right, you want a running back with quality speed who can stretch to the boundary and make those gaps create by forcing them to over pursue or in the places where they under pursued. Then a simple cut and a lot of throttle can shoot a gap and make a good play. But in this scheme with a more vertical attacking offensive line, the soft spot in the defense is instant, and it changes quite readily. From play to play to play, you don't know where that soft spot in the defense is going to be. And the first thing you want to do is make a quick dynamic cut, find yourself on that lane, and power ahead. But then the soft spot's going to change again. With a hat-on-hat situation, if the running back picks the right side of the tackle, now you're going to see the defensive lineman try and get over to that right side, which is going to make the left side gap open up. And if you don't have the ability to do those little shifty dynamic cuts, you're not going to be able to get back to the new soft spot. And this is exactly what you saw in the Rams game. Malcolm Brown was able to get over the hip of his offensive lineman and find another 3-4 yards, while Akers picked his lane and smashed into it and got his shorter gain. This is not a hot hand situation. This is not a fad. This is Malcolm Brown fits this scheme best, and Akers and Henderson do not. The scheme has changed away from the preference of Akers and Henderson and towards Malcolm Brown. This doesn't mean Malcolm Brown is a phenomenal running back, but now he has the opportunity in front of him in a scheme that fits him, and this is going to change how this committee plays out. As I said, going into the season, I had it at 12-9-4. Right now, forget it. Malcolm Brown is the lead back in this system. He will be the guy for the rest of this season. He is going to be on a scale of 15, 7, and 3. So now you have a 15-point running back that you're looking at in fantasy football formats. That's a third-round pick. So, yeah, somebody got lucky and probably claimed him off your waiver wire already. And if that guy doesn't necessarily need a running back, remember, Malcolm Brown now has a third, maybe a fourth round grade at the lowest, as long as he can stay healthy in this system. Akers, handcuff. Henderson, nothing. Making Malcolm Brown a player you want to target. Now, somebody might have already bought in, drank the Kool-Aid, and fallen into a good opportunity. But if they have a little bit of doubt still in them, this is going to end quickly. So I would advise people to overtrade for him if you're looking to acquire him. Give a 6th, 7th, 8th round pick to a guy who just claimed somebody off the waiver wire. If he's still on your waiver wire, Merry Christmas. But if you're trading a 7th, 8th, 6th round player for a guy that's going to be worth a 3rd or 4th round pick, you're still winning value, even though you can make the optics of it look like you're overpaying. You're not going to be overpaying in the end. This is his backfield. He is their guy. That is 2020. It is done. And LaFleur, if you're watching, not me, the Rams, you need to copy this. This needs to be in your playbook because McVay, the master, has spoken, and this needs to be in your playbook. A.J. Dillon will love running in this scheme. I figured we'd switch it up today and do a little bit of fantasy football. And while this comes to you later in the season, we did just start before the season kicked off. Remember, if you go down below and subscribe, we had Malcolm Brown as a 3rd running back who you could have taken in the 12th through 14th rounds in your fantasy drafts. We would have had you avoiding Cam Akers, and we would have had you selling Daryl Henderson for whatever scrap of value he had left. Getting a third running back that late in your draft is going to make your team better, but when it turns out like this, you're kissing trophies and bundles of money. So make sure you go down below and subscribe. We are going to be with you throughout the calendar year. So next summer, you're going to be getting this information daily. Make sure to leave notes in the comment section about how we can improve. I respond to everything that we see. And as always, love you guys. We need you. Stay strong, and I'll see you on the other side.